So you had been 2 years on the township board.
Yeah, Nipsey Township.
Okay. Now, would people who knew you before that, would they have been surprised that you were now running for office that involved politically, or had you indicated interest in that before?
Well, like I said, I ran a campaign for Jim Krieger,
right.
and I majored in political science in school, and it's sort of a Southern tradition in this area, like it is in Taylor and some of the others. We have so many people who migrated from the South. So it was really Southern type politics, which is families orientated, where there's groups of families that control votes, and very sociable with barbecues and stuff. So it was part of the social life of Ypsi Township, and still, even today, is still a little like that. Huge parties, huge barbecues. I continued that tradition for years with a big 4th of July party. It was, and a lot of they call it Ypsi-Tucky, and the reason being is so many residents here from the South that came up to work in the car plants. I think when I was state rep, that we had the highest concentration of manufactured workers in the world.
No kidding.
Located right in this area, because you had GM, AD, Ford Rosenville, Ford Saline, both Hydromatic, the division, the transmission division. So it's a huge, huge concentration.
And that's what brought your dad and uncle up here.
They were all in construction, but they came up because of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason I came here to get a job, basically.
Right.
My son tells a story of getting the Latinos and the Mexicans to do work. And I said, you know, Evan, when I came here, I was the Mexican. You know, it's talking about work that no one else would do. The Southerners were the one that did it. I started out hanging drywall, you know, and did the type of work that basically no one else would do.
Right. You're now in the legislature. Not necessarily the most popular Democrat from some of the Lansing folks' perspective. Mm-hmm. Where'd you involve yourself? What did you go after there?
Well, when I got there, first I was very upset about Copeland supporting my opponent, and I went
He chaired the Appropriations Committee and had been for some time.
And Roy was on that committee. Roy Smith was there. And I went to the Speaker and told him that I defeated a person on appropriation.
And the Speaker at that time?
Was Bill Ryan. And I told Bill that I wanted on that committee because one of the big issues he used in the campaign was that he had been on appropriations and been effective, and I made the argument that he wasn't effective, but I said, you know, I have to get on that thing. I'm almost positive he's going to run against me in 2 years. And so the Speaker said, well, freshmen don't get on appropriations. So we argued back and forth. But I had the reputation before I got there as being a maverick type person. The UAW wasn't very happy with me, and the MEA didn't support me. And you remember those days; they were very, very powerful groups, and they were coming to me and trying to reconcile, trying to solve their problems. And I said, you know, the way to solve a problem with me is to get me on appropriation. So, and Bobby Krim was very instrumental in getting me on the committee at that time because he realized he wanted to keep control of the House. That was and we only had 57 or 58 seats.
What was Bobby's role at that point?
He was Ryan's administrative assistant, but he ran in a district and came back and was elected floor leader.
Okay, that in the 73?
In the 72. I think he was elected in 64, got defeated in 66. Then he worked as Ryan's administrative assistant when Ryan was Speaker, and then he went and ran and came back and got elected floor leader. So he was very instrumental and was very, very close to Bill Ryan.
Right. Mm-hmm. You wound up getting that appointment. Mm-hmm. What'd you spend your time on there?
I initially Copeland wouldn't give me a committee, so I had nothing to do. But Bill Huffman, who was become a very good friend of mine, had the higher education committee, which at that time both the junior college bill and the 4-year bill was in the higher ed subcommittee. And so to give me a chairmanship, Copeland Huffman divided up the subcommittee and put me in charge of the community college bill.
So Huffman was a rep from
Madison Heights. Yeah, Madison.
And he chaired the whole higher education appropriations subcommittee, but he agreed to split off.
He did us a favor. Yeah, he was a very nice guy. And Carl Purcell, who later ran for Congress, did it in the Senate. Billy worked it out where they did a separate thing in the Senate. And then the next year he ran for the Senate, so I was chairman of higher ed. Then I became chairman of the regulatory bill and on joint capital outlay, and chairman of grants and transfers, and all of those. So I became Chairman Jacobetti wasn't very interested in some of those things, and so he just gave the responsibility to me, and I actually became very influential in the appropriations process.
Were there particular issues that you got particularly involved in?
Yeah, well, I in my master's program at Michigan, the urban planning is a lot more than just what's a historical plan that people see, the planning thing. I sort of emphasized local government budgets and structure, and so I was very familiar to the state appropriations process, very familiar. I had classes from Tom Anton, who was a former head of Department of Management Budget in the state of Illinois, and people like that. So I understood zero-based budgeting, which was at that time a very catchphrase, and I think because of my background, which was unusual, being educated in the whole area of the budget process, that give me a heads up on a lot of the people there, because most of them didn't have that type of educational background.
Right. How long did you serve on appropriations before you then became Speaker?
10 years.
10 years. And then became Speaker?
Yeah, I ran against Joe Forbes and Matt McNeely, and there was another one, and I can't remember who else it was. Was Hollister running in? Dave Hollister, no, I'm not sure. Matt McNeely and Forbes and I think, were the three main people.
Yeah, that sounds right. And I don't think he may have been. I don't remember.
I know I ran against him 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
In different positions in the caucus. Maybe that wasn't it.
But your major contender competition was at Forbes? Was that?
Yeah. Joe was the major competitor.
And you had served together. Well, he preceded you in the legislature.
Yeah, he was there before.
So
in fact, one of his arguments, I'd only been there 10 years. I hadn't been there long enough to be Speaker.
Enough experience. There
I didn't have enough experience to be Speaker.
Talk about that race. Was it representative of different philosophies, different?
No, I never felt it was a philosophical race. Both Joe and I were both social liberals. I might have been, but that was only because of appropriation, because I was maybe a little more fiscal conservative than Joe, but that's only because I served on that committee, and I don't know how Joe would have reacted if he'd been on that committee.
Right.
But I would say philosophically we were very close. The UAW supported Joe and opposed me, but they couldn't get their horses together. They had problems because Bard Young, who was my regional director, and
regional UAW director.
Regional UAW director from this area openly supported me, even against the UAW. And then you had Buddy Battles from Detroit, who openly supported me, and you had Coleman Young, who supported me. And so I had almost unanimous support in the Black Caucus. And my coalition was primarily was sort of the Irish group, which was Jim O'Neill and Dick Young and all that group, Mike Griffin. Traditionally more conservative, I think, than most of the caucus. And then I had a mixture. It was, I don't think it was a philosophical race. The UAW obviously put their efforts, was primarily Sam Fishman, who put a lot of effort behind.
He was their
UAW CAP coordinator.
Okay.
Well, at that time, I think he might have been the AFL-CIO president. I think he was. I think he'd moved, which UAW then was within the AFL-CIO, and but there was groups in the AFL-CIO, like the building trades, that openly supported me for Speaker because I'd come out of the building trades. So it was an unusual race. I obviously was the first Speaker to get elected without open UAW support in the modern era, and that was sort of a major change. Another major change, the year I got elected Speaker, Bobby had, I think, raised about $30,000 in the caucus fund.
Bobby Krim,
yeah.
who
when I left there 6 years later, we were spending over $900,000 out of that fund. So that began a change that is only increased since I left.